Welcome to Leadership Within, the podcast that dives deep into the human side of leadership. I'm Vanessa May, I'm your host today, and I'm with...
TK, or as some people say, my full name, which is Tomasz TK Kropiewnicki. And if your ears hurt right now, I'm sorry. Hi, Vanessa.
Oh, I don't think my ears hurt. I think they sit there. They're kind of like in that. There's a beautiful, would you say it again? There's a beautiful rhythm to your name.
Tomasz TK Kropiewnicki.
Oh, perfect. So welcome, Tomasz. How are you arriving?
I'm arriving from a coaching session I just had, which had a beautiful moment towards the end. And, I was a bit late for our conversation, which it's like while this moment was happening, I was texting you, Vanessa, saying, Vanessa, give me a few minutes. Just maybe these moments where, emotion comes out and I feel like the person really discovered themselves in this moment are always serene.
Yeah, they're beautiful, aren't they?
Indeed.
They're like those tender moments. And that really takes us into a really lovely kind of tender, soft space for this conversation.
Yes.
So what you suggested this one, and I'm really grateful that you suggested it, was this notion of capacity. So we wanted to talk to you today about something I've been working on in my work, which is around leadership and knowing your capacity. Mm-hmm. And it sounds such a simple thing, but I thought I'd probably introduce it by, first of all, a definition. I looked into what does the definition of capacity mean? And so when you look up, you ask Google, define capacity, it says it's the maximum amount that something can contain. Mm-hmm. So then I asked it, okay, so tell me what human capacity is. And then it says it's the total potential, I can't speak this morning, the total potential within us to act, create, and solve problems. So I'm interested in this notion of capacity because so often I meet myself and other leaders who kind of drive themselves from the neck upwards. Mm-hmm. So they're quite in their heads and they assume that they have endless capacity, or what's kind of driving them underneath might be some self-esteem issues, some self-regard issues, lots of different things that can be underneath this need to push, this need to prove, this need to keep going. And I'm very much of the idea that we are on this journey to reconnect to our shared humanity. And this podcast is all about our humanness.
Indeed.
So what I experience often in clients that show up to work with me is this idea that, so they come and they're kind of feeling really disconnected from themselves, tired, overwhelmed, busy, and kind of wanting to feel better, but really also having this idea that they can't drop anything. And I feel like, leaders carry a lot of weight on their shoulders, a lot of responsibility. And, it's really easy to leave you out of leadership and focus very much on what everyone else needs in the team from you. So I created this tool because I was literally waking up in my day and I would wake up feeling tired, a bit, and then I'd just go into push mode, right? Okay, I need to exercise. I need to, hit the ground running. I need to raise that energy. And so my relationship to myself was harsh. It wasn't a soft, compassionate, accepting one. And I'm using was, it still can be harsh, very harsh, critical, go, drive, achieve. And I can get esteem from that achievement and that purpose. And so I had some clients where I see this most is clients that work in areas like, for example, sustainability or very mission driven areas where, the cause out there is big and we care deeply and there's so much work to do. But where do we need to put our attention? And thinking that, we just need to keep pushing, and then not being able to, wondering, why am I feeling tired, disconnected, a little bit resentful? And how do I meet this all differently, knowing that I don't have endless capacity?
It's actually quite an interesting topic, definitely. I remember when you we first spoke about this tool quite some time ago. I know that it evolved. And by the way, we'll obviously put a link in the podcast description to the wonderful capacity compass. But what struck me is what you just said in terms of there is a defined capacity. Now, interestingly, I will share that I have thought about it slightly differently, as in there is, I would agree with you, a defined capacity, but you can also regenerate. Right? There's certain activities, certain things that you can do that might help you be in balance. So that's one thing. And the second thing I've discovered is that the capacity or the top of the vessel where it just pours over or spills over has a different effect for different people. Now, for instance, I've had situations, I think this January, where I've maybe reached my capacity, and it was like an asymptote of me being unable to do things, but still pushing, trying to get things slower, but not breaking down, and yet trying to persevere. It's like trying to reach the speed of light that you can never reach. Still, we will link the tool, but I can see it's such a wonderful technique. I'm wondering, Vanessa, if you'd like to guide myself and our listeners through this.
Okay, yeah, sure, for sure. So, I wanted something visual because I'm visual, and I also wanted something quick, and easy, but that wasn't, that was also deep. So when I wake up, or when anyone wakes up, I think we can just assume that we've charged up overnight, and we've got a full charge.
Mm-hmm.
And that may or may not necessarily be true. So
True.
the first part of it is to simply notice, like, in different areas. So if we talked about resilience, we would tend to talk about mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual resilience. And so the first part of the noticing is to say, where am I, when I wake up, where am I mentally? So for example, I was saying to you, I have been waking up mentally, well, actually, if I start emotionally a bit low, and then mentally in that kind of critical place. And so, asking myself, okay, where am I in my thought process? Where am I in my emotional, field?
Mm-hmm.
Where am I physically? So, for example, yesterday I didn't run yesterday. I didn't do so I've got more physical energy this morning. And then where am I spiritually? Am I connected to what really matters? And so that's the first part of it, is just saying, where are you in those four areas?
And
Does that make sense?
it does. It's interesting to identify it, right? One would say that the physical one is something that we can more easily be in touch with, although many people aren't. But when it comes to, we're getting up, and the spiritual one, right? Especially when it comes to professionals, it's not something that people often think about. And there's different traditions of spirituality. There's also people that don't necessarily subscribe to a tradition. Now, how would you recommend people reflect on their spiritual level of, where they are every morning?
It's a great question. Um, so for me, sometimes to connect to my spiritual essence, I need to move my energy a little bit. So I need to breathe and sit with my body, and have some spaciousness. Now that might be me getting outside, or me opening the window and noticing the light. But for me to connect to my soul purpose is me connecting into the wholeness of me. And I've talked about it before, kind of feeling my quirky free range bird, my,
Mm-hmm.
the essence of me. And then saying, okay, where am I in relationship to that connection? So sometimes I feel really connected to it and alive, and
Mm-hmm.
like you can hear my energies moving even if as I talk about it. There's a sense
Yeah.
of joy and fun. But often I'm not waking up in that space. I'm waking up. I'm turning my alarm off, and then the temptation is. I can tell you what the pattern was. It was horrible. It was turn my alarm off, check my emails, check the calendar, go and stand on the scales. I mean, what a shit way to start your day, right? And then like, oh, it's moved 1 point or not. So I was in this loop of who I think I should be,
Mm-hmm.
and waking up and meeting that expectation on me, rather than waking up and meeting like, oh, okay, your body's waking up slowly. You're noticing like, oh, I put my feet on the ground. I'm like, oh, I'm a bit stiff. My joints are a bit
Mm-hmm.
stiff, and then kind of like, okay, how do I connect to the soul of me, the essence of me, the groove of me? And so for me now, it might be like put on something funky in terms of music, or, and then just say, okay, what's important for you to express today?
Oh, that's quite wonderful. And knowing there are two more steps, if I may follow up on this checking of the soul and what truly matters. I think I'm wondering about one thing because, well, obviously you're quite ready to ask yourself this question and used to being able to check in or where you are with that. Possibly, hopefully, on many days you're answering that you're really following it. But the conversation I had just before this wonderful recording session is maybe a representation of the fact that some people are maybe not, well, I'm not saying that they're not ready for some questions, but when they're being asked, these questions trigger emotion, these questions trigger certain outbursts of things that people normally don't want to hear about. I'll maybe give you a different example. I remember years and years ago, I don't know why this example stuck with me. In a company I was working with, in a small office, there was a new L&D person that came to and visited us, and they have done a training on self-organization, simple stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and in this moment, there was like five guys and the lady trainer there, and she has given us a workshop task, which is grab a bunch of post-its and write on them things that you would need to do if this week was the last one of your life.
Oof, okay.
It's I don't think she was necessarily maybe preparing people for this particular question, but one of my friends had burst into tears, and he was definitely having a moment with his new child coming into the world, and all the things started swirling for him. Thankfully, he was with the people that were close and helpful to him, and we've managed to get him out of a difficult one. But I'm wondering, Vanessa, how do you advise or suggest people ask themselves this spiritual question and forgive themselves and be in the safe space, not to go too deep if they're not ready for it?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and I kind of want to be clear that I do not wake up and find this necessarily an easy thing to do.
Yeah.
So what I am saying is I am conditioned to treat myself like a machine. Like I don't have spiritual, soulful needs. And those spiritual, soulful needs that I have, when I think about them, they are not associated with necessarily doing.
Mm-hmm.
They are much more being, for example, for me, so my soul, I believe, wants a softer life, a more colourful life, a more joyful life than I am currently allowing myself to have. And so when I think about my capacity, if I have been allowing myself experiences in the day, like slowing down, like appreciating and acknowledging myself, like seeing. I watched a movie last night called Coda. It was so beautiful. I really recommend people to watch it.
The one with
the deaf girl,
deaf
the hearing girl, and it I just cried through it. I just thought, oh my god, this is so poignant and
such
beautiful.
a simple
about
movie. Yeah, it got so many rewards, right? And when I've watched it, this is just quite something.
Yeah, and I think what it spoke to me was the fact that, wow, I have a hearing ability that I take for granted in every way in every day, and so, today when I woke up, one of the things that I did on my dog walk was notice the sounds. Now that is my soul, increasing its capacity, so for me, I think, there is this idea that actually, to stop associating my soul being on purpose as achievement, a doing, a performative thing, and just saying, is there an ease in my nature? Is there a wellness and an expression in the way that I am showing up and being? So I suppose I would say when you ask yourself that question, capacity, and if you notice, wow, there's a big blank, it's to kind of go, yeah, that's totally normal. Most of us are probably running like that. And there's such an opportunity to, in the noticing of that, to then go, oh, what might be longing to be expressed?
And I'm noticing two things. Obviously, as our listeners have heard, as Vanessa mentioned, her wonderful dog, her companion, came in, linked spiritually, hopefully. And I mean that by maybe feeling that, you referred to your wonderful dog. And also the importance of, when we're searching for our sense of meaning, is to make sure that we discover our own and not someone else's, which, we're being blinded by with social media and everything around us. It's just so easy to take some slogans and beliefs for granted that they might be in your soul, where they're actually being there because someone else said that. But it's just the first step of 3. So I'm wondering, after listeners have done their reflection in step 1, checked in with themselves, where do they go next with the tool?
Yeah. Okay. So the next part of it is just to notice then, okay, how full am I? So how stretched am I? If I think about my day ahead, where am I in terms of spaciousness? Am I at capacity? Am I already waking up? So I gave you the example of, if I wake up emotionally and I'm feeling a bit meh and a bit low, in a low mood, then actually I can, really realize that, gosh, okay, I'm under par in that area. And actually, I don't have a great deal of emotional capacity. So then, I would then score myself, lower in terms of how much capacity I have. I don't have a lot of spaciousness. So where that informs me is like, when that invitation comes in, oh, can I just talk to you about something? It might be a no from me, because I actually don't have bandwidth emotionally. Or if someone says, do you want to go for a run? And I'm already, physically a bit drained, I might want to for, a reason of social connection, but actually my body's saying no. So I might say, so the idea that this gives us choice, if we can then kind of go, okay, so how much bandwidth do I actually have? When I look at all those areas, how full is my battery? So that's the next part of it, is just to give yourself a sense of how much energy and capacity do I have as I'm waking up. And I think the reason for that, back to your point about renewal, we're always renewing and depleting during our day. But if we're starting off, slightly under capacity or already stretched, because we've had a late night or we're working really hard on a project or whatever, then actually, how do we need to meet ourselves and our day differently? So this idea that capacity isn't just about filling your diary and going moment to moment from meeting to meeting, but actually being able to have choice. And the reason that I say this is, because I'm thinking about, for the people that are listening, so what? This sounds quite indulgent. Why would you do this? How often have you snapped at someone and then thought, where did that come from? Or reacted in, a meeting to something where you think, gosh, I don't know where that came from. And so the idea of this is to just recognize, like, wow, actually, I might be a little bit more critical today with people's ideas, or I might actually have loads of capacity to invite people in and do some brainstorming with me, or whatever, or to do some, let's talk about where you're at, But I used to have a boss that used to say, my door's always open. And it was such a bullshit thing, because his door wasn't open. And when he did, and when you did actually go in, you'd get these double signals.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? What he was really saying was, I want to be connected. I want to know what's going on, which is different.
That's true. It brings me to maybe my point on that, because on one hand, obviously, you need to give yourself the permission to acknowledge your lack of capacity if it isn't there. But what I have found, and I think your boss example also plays into that, is making the promises that your future self will have to meet, and treating, at least I do that, and treat myself like a machine. And I think a diary of future meetings is a good representation of that, right? For instance, you're on Monday morning, hopefully, with spaciousness after the weekend, and then you're scheduling all that, making all these plans, oh yeah, I'll do that, I'll meet with these people and so on. That's such a lovely thing. And when the day comes, your battery might not be as, full as you would want it to be. And you might have to give yourself the permission to, change things. If I ever said, my door is always open, I always meant, like, you are my priority, right? I will, despite whatever capacity I have, make the time for you, even if, it will hurt me. It's there because that's how I really feel. But it's also making a promise that you're making regardless of the level of capacity you have each day. So my maybe recommendation is, like, you never know what day you might be having. And if you overload yourself or load yourself quite high, you might be forced to do it. And there were days when I had to, ask people to reschedule for, not true reasons, because I just didn't have the capacity anymore.
Yeah, I love that, because I think it's about expectation, isn't it? And the expectation that you set for people, if you say that, and is that a reasonable expectation to set of yourself and for them? But yeah, totally. And I think,
what's next, Vanessa? Yeah, go ahead.
We've talked a lot about kind of being under, like, overstretched and the other thing. But I kind of want to speak about the other side of the coin, which is, so, for example, a lot of my colleagues at the moment who are coaches and run their own businesses are quiet. And, because August, July, they tend to be quiet months. And in the development world, some interesting things are happening where people are, kind of questioning investments and things like that. So one of the things that I notice in myself is that at the moment, I'm understimulated. So then it's like, okay, how do I want to meet that? Where do I want to get my stimulation from? Because I love what I do, and when I'm quiet, I can go lots of different places with myself. So actually my capacity, I've got a lot of capacity at the moment and it's not filled. So where do I want to put my energy? How do I want to create my day from there? It puts me in an interesting creative space of, like, oh, actually, if I gave myself permission, I could work on some content, I could do some different things, which is what I've been doing. but I think it's like, where does my it might be actually, I need to get out in nature a lot more, because it's summer and it's great, and it feeds my soul. Okay. So it doesn't just have to be, I'm full. It can be
Maybe
the other way
that's
too.
usually my
I'm bored.
perspective, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think often in work, that thing of people not being engaged or disengaged, just kind of like ambivalent. And I think that's under capacity. Like, okay, I'm not stretched enough. Where might I want to stretch myself? And that takes us on to the last part, which is, okay, so knowing all of that, what's important for today, like what's something that you can do that can meet yourself, and it might be, I need to stretch myself a bit today, or it might be, I need to just give myself a really loving talking to and soothe myself a bit or whatever. But it's then prioritizing according to you and what you need, and giving yourself that permission.
You've used the word anchor.
Yes.
The day, right? And I'm wondering where does this word come from and what this point is all about?
So anchor was, when I wrote my book, it was one of the first phases I wrote about, in terms of, if you were going to live courageously, you needed to know what your anchor was. And I think for me, in a world that is often noisy and people are sharing their lanes a lot, and what they're doing, and there's a lot of comparison, it's easy to come out of your own lane or lose your anchor in terms of what everyone else wants from you, what the organization needs, what your team needs, or whatever. So for me, anchoring is really important in leadership, because it's that thing of saying, here I am, this is what's important for me as a leader in my own life, in my work, and I'm anchoring to that. And then, and then moving towards that. And it's not having disregard for everyone else's anchor, but it's just like, okay, I'm giving off a clear bat signal, this is what I stand for.
Such a beautiful thing, and definitely makes me think about my own anchor that needs to be there. So Vanessa, as we're coming close to the end of this episode, what's the pitch? Why should people try the tool before we end?
So I invite people to try the tool just for a week, and to bring awareness, because we know everything is about awareness, responsibility, choice. And so for me, there's this, okay, if you're running on autopilot, which most of us are, and then we are wondering why our days are spent kind of with running at full charge, and then having a really depleted battery, and then potentially waking up, tired or not feeling great. Actually, how can we bring that awareness to ourselves of like, wow, I could actually meet myself and author my day, my diary, my resilience differently. So that's the invitation. Is like, it's not you don't have to do it forever, but it is a practical thing to just bring you into your own lane first thing in the morning, and then to set things up according to your needs, your authoring, your leadership.
Wonderful. And if you want to try the tool, the link is in the podcast description. And as always, if you find this useful as a moment with us to talk about leadership and yourself, share it with others. And until then, have fun and use the daily capacity compass. Cheers.